Facebook, for example, there's a lot of integration between Facebook and Twitter. But Facebook is more of, you go there, you make a quick posting, and then you can leave it for a few hours and or maybe come back a few days later. You have friend requests, you pick them up. You can put photographs on Facebook. Facebook is almost like a base of operations for reaching out to people. Twitter is a little more immediate. I describe Twitter as a combination between blogging and instant messaging, but there's built-in limits so it doesn't become a time sink. You have to basically get in with your message and get out within 140 characters, not words, but characters. And, well, some people would say, well, how many things can you say in 140 characters plus including spaces? You can say a lot.
There's a limited amount of time. There's
a limited amount of space, not time.
Space.
But what you can do is you can engage other people in conversations in Twitter. Unlike Facebook, where it's going to, there's a major time lag in when people respond to you on Facebook versus responding to you on Twitter. Same kind of time lag if you threw out a podcast, people will respond to it, but it's not as immediate as Twitter. So I think what it is Twitter takes both the principles of an instant messenger, but it's not an instant messenger. It takes the same idea of a blog, even though it's not a blog, and puts the two together, and then says, and to make sure you don't get completely sucked into this, we're only letting you say what you can in 140 characters. Yeah. For some people, that works.
Spit it out quick.
Yeah, spit it out quick, and some people, and you and I had talked about this earlier. Some people would argue that this is the downfall of modern communication. I can say without reservation that Twitter has actually made me a better communicator. I tend to go off on a lot of tangents.
Really?
And that comes from being. I think that comes from just being
better at précising.
Yeah, exactly. You learn to kick in that self-editor and just come to the point of what you want. And then let people know afterwards, more directly, this is what I'm thinking. And the other thing I've noticed about Twitter is that it's helped me appreciate the world outside of my computer. If the information gets to be too much, if I start looking at TweetDeck or Twirl or whatever client I'm using to get my tweets, if I'm looking at it and it starts to blur over, if I start looking at Facebook and everything starts to seem kind of Greek to me, I go, you know what? I've been at the computer too long. So I shut down. I'll go outside. I'll play with my kid. I'll do things other than
like a normal human being.
Yeah, and that's what I tend to tell people is you should not use these social media tools. Everything that I've mentioned, while I've been saying here.
Don't overdo it.
Don't overdo it. First off, you can't learn everything.
But people get hooked on it. They do overdo it.
It is a bit like a drug.
Well, that's the worry.
Yeah.
The other worry, and you kind of hinted at this a moment ago.
Sure.
Is this not the unconditional surrender of the English language?
Well, considering that I've written 2 books on this subject, I've got a 3rd book coming out and a 4th one on the way. No.
Yeah, but you've figured it out. I mean, a lot of people who are involved in this haven't obviously figured it out.
And
they're just going to start communicating in these kind of
right. And that's where I tend to say, okay, if you haven't figured it out, please, pay a visit to ImagineThatStudios.com. Talk to me. Have me come in and tell you about some of the pros and cons, the benefits and pitfalls of social media. It's no different than when I've noticed that people preferred to communicate with me in a corporate setting. They prefer to communicate with me via email. Yeah. Now, these are 2 people emailing each other in the same building. I'm like, that's ludicrous. And I went to a point where I would actually go into someone's office and the person looked at me and goes, well, why didn't you just send me an email? I said, because I wanted to see you face to face. The reason I'm here is evidence enough that if people are going to fly me in from New Zealand to talk, if they wanted to get these lessons on Twitter or lessons on Facebook, they could subscribe to my podcast or something like that. Yeah. But instead, they wanted me to come in physically. Nothing beats physical contact. No. Nothing beats picking up a telephone and saying, how are you doing?
But all of this is reducing that. I mean, yes, because of this accumulation of electronic communication.
If you let it.
You want the physical contact.
Right, you should. Yeah. See, social media for me isn't the be-all and end-all. It's a tool. It is a tool of communication, but it's not the only tool of communication. Can you reach me easily through Twitter? Sure you can, but you know what? You can reach me just as easily if you call me on my phone.
I looked at. I was looking at your blog and a couple of others a couple of days ago, and I noticed that there's this little video on Flutter.
Flutter.
Oh my God! We've been talking about Flutter.
I have been so amazed. I've been so amazed.
I didn't realise at first.
Yeah.
That this is all a gag.
It was a gag. Yeah.
The next logical jump is to truncate the whole thing down to about 10 characters.
The joke is the joke of Flutter. And you can see the link.
Yeah.
The link, yeah.
Well, I'll talk about Flutter afterwards.
Okay.
We're actually running out of time. You're here,
wow!
You're here to do a program.
Do you want me to come back in? I can always come back in another time.
Well, you might just do that. But you're here to do a program. I'll talk about the program.
Yeah, absolutely.
We gotta go. 10 o'clock. Thank you.
That tends to happen.